Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Martial Energetics web show. I'm Dane Dormio. I'm joined here by my good buddy Andrew Brown. And I know I always say I have a special guest, but tonight I have a really, really special guest because it took me months of pestering to get this guy to finally schedule an interview. And this is special for me because I've learned in the realm of martial arts. I started when I was a kid. I started at age 10. I've learned from lots of different schools and lots of different teachers over the years. But there's one individual in particular that I refer to affectionately and apocryphally as my Sifu, because it was with his guidance that I experienced some of the biggest breakthroughs of my martial arts journey, both in terms of internal awareness and physical functionality. And so I'm really glad that he's here. Rich Robson is a former pilot and was the proprietor of the Kung Fu Academy of San Diego for almost 20 years. He learned Bak Fu Pai, also known as White Tiger Kung Fu, from Doo Wai, and San Soo from Jerry Peterson, who is a student of Jimmy Woo. So I'm really looking forward to hearing some old stories and hearing about these two really fascinating, very different styles of Chinese family Kung Fu that happen to come to me through Rich. So Rich, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks, Dane. And, but it's a two-way street, because I always thought of you as, you were a good student. You took it serious, and I always enjoyed teaching you. You believed what I told you. And anybody likes when people believe what they say, right? So, and I've watched you progress too, and it's pretty neat. I don't know, what, 15 years or so now?
Yeah, about 17 actually.
Yeah. So
yeah, which that to me that kind of seems like a long time, but I know it's just a slice of the time that you've been training. So what I want to hear about first is because one thing that I think anybody who knows Rich would say about him is he's a pretty humble guy. He doesn't like to brag a lot. And so even though I trained with you for years, I never really heard you talk a lot about like your own past and your experiences. You're more of like just like, here it is, this is what it is. If it works, great. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine, but just it is what it is. So I'm curious to really hear about your origin story and how you came to be involved with martial arts and how you found your way to San Soo and Bak Fu Pai.
Well, as far as martial arts, it was real simple. I must have been in my mid-20s, and I just wanted to be a tough guy, plain and simple. It was kind of the crowd I ran with in high school and stuff. That's just how we fancied ourselves. So that is the long and short of why I started. There was no altruistic motives or anything when I started. I just wanted to be a tough guy.
You were like the greasers in the greasers in what was that book that
Outsiders.
The Outsiders. Yeah, that's right. You like the greasers in The Outsiders.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but if you say so.
Rebel without a cause.
I'll check it out. But so I started with Taekwondo, actually. And
were you, when you were a teenager?
No, I was about my mid-20s. I was about 25. I'd just come out to San Diego, and there was a school just a block away. So, everything was real convenient. I could satisfy my need for ego boost, I guess, and not have to go far. But anyway, I did that for about 3 years. I forget what belt I got. And one day they were doing an exercise, and I'm not the most limber guy. They thought I should be more limber than I actually was, and they kind of forced my leg to do something that just caused a big pop. And actually, I still work with that today. It has caused permanent damage. So that was the end of that. I mean, I couldn't do anything for a while, and then I was just starting to feel better again, and I walked past Jerry Peterson's school, San Soo, and have you ever seen San Soo, Andrew? You know what it is, right?
Oh yeah, I've done San Soo.
Yeah, it's different than Taekwondo. Put it that way, for sure.
True.
I thought, wow, that's way cool. So that's why I studied with Jerry, and got up to black belt with Jerry, and then, hey, I'm an expert. I'm ready to open up a school, right? So I opened up a school, and about an hour before the grand opening, I'm thinking, maybe I'm not an expert. But, I worked through it and everything, and I learned. And it was shortly before is when I met Jim Lacey. And people know Jim Lacey, right?
He's associated with Bak Fu Pai.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Actually, I was working on the school to get it open, and he came by and started talking about how, he was a martial artist too. And I thought, oh, okay, good. So you want to come to the school? Well, no. So, but I went down to his house later and said, well, you sure you don't want to learn? And he said, no, but I could teach you a few things. And that's how I got into Bak Fu Pai, which was a beautiful mix, I think, because San Soo was very physical, and they don't really teach internal principles, but to best do San Soo, you got to do them. And I think anybody that's done San Soo for any length of time, you just kind of fall into, at least a lot of the internal art principles, because, they're not stiff, they don't resist, and they go with the flow a lot. So just a lot of same things. But Jim was giving me reasons. He was giving me theory and stuff. So I stayed with Jim for a while. He introduced me to Doo Wai, and you've been up to Doo Wai's, right, Dane?
I haven't had the opportunity.
You never went to Doo Wai's with us? No way.
Unfortunately, no.
Oh man, I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
There was almost an opportunity one time, but it didn't work out.
Yeah. Well, anyway, now we'd go up there and work out. So anyway, that's kind of the story.
All right. So then, why don't you just tell us real quick? You say you did Taekwondo, then you did San Soo, and then you did Bak Fu Pai. And what year did you start Taekwondo?
Taekwondo would have been about 78, 79, right around 78.
There. Okay, cool. All right.
The San Soo would have been in the mid 80s.
Uh-huh.
I opened the school 93.
Okay.
And that's when I met Jim Lacey and got involved with Doo Wai and got into Bak Fu Pai.
And do you still have a coach?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, did you still have a coach? Do you still have someone that teaches you anything or that checks on your skills, make sure you're...
Not really. I'm out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, once you get to a certain age, they all tend to die off. So.
Wow.
Well, and it's Andrew. It's not that I couldn't learn. I'm sure I could, but
you're so far away from everything. That's for sure.
It's really interesting that you mentioned the connection between Bak Fu Pai and San Soo, and that I've also observed this, that in San Soo the internal principles are not taught explicitly, but they are in there, and the way I say it is Tai Chi is and I use Tai Chi in a blanket sense because nobody's heard of Bak Fu Pai pretty much, so I just say Tai Chi, and at least people are in the ballpark. And a lot of the principles you taught were from the Tai Chi classics, so it's on the principle level, they're all internal martial arts have certain similarities, but Tai Chi will improve your San Soo, and San Soo will improve your Tai Chi because Tai Chi is the internal energetics, and San Soo is the external application, and it's done in a free form way, so it incorporates spontaneity. You're learning how to move not in a predefined rigid way, but just spontaneously. And so I like to say that they actually include each other, because Tai Chi is a study of how to use your body effectively for anything that you want to do, including kill people. And so it includes San Soo, and San Soo is a study of how to use your body efficiently and effectively to kill people, which involves learning how to use your body efficiently and effectively. So they kind of, each one kind of contains the other in a certain sense.
They do. And, I've always said there's form and function. And form is the principles of movement. And by the way, I think Tai Chi can apply to walking down the street, opening the door, picking something up, picking up your coffee there.
Right.
I think the principles of Tai Chi are basically how a human being should be. A dog already knows how to be a dog. He knows how to act like a dog, what a dog does, how to be like a dog. A cat knows how to act like a cat, what to do, et cetera, et cetera. Problem with human beings is the frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe gets in the way of how to be a human being, how to move, how we're designed to move. So I think Tai Chi brings all those principles up, not only for fighting, but like I said, for everything, just how to act. And that's where the health aspects come in too. When you learn to use your body in a way that you're not fighting yourself all the time, you're conserving energy, which means longevity. And while you do live, you have more spare energy. So, and so they do work. That's the form. And then the function for San Soo, I think San Soo is just one arena that you can practice those principles in. You could practice those principles playing football, just anything.
Yeah.
In fact, I've often said that there's really not a professional athlete that does not know Tai Chi, or they wouldn't be a professional.
Good point.
Yeah, certainly. That's the great thing about universal principles. They're universal. They're there for anybody to discover. And one way I think of Tai Chi is as the study of mastery itself, the study of the principles of mastery in any domain. So if you achieve mastery in any domain, then you either implicitly or explicitly, consciously or unconsciously understand and embody those principles, because it's just the study of universal principles of what makes the human organism, what allows the human organism to function most efficiently and effectively. I call it the oldest flow state technology.
Yeah, that's good name. That's good. I mean, that says it all.
I want to talk a little bit about these two lineages, because it's really interesting, kind of the connections and how they came together, and also because most people have never heard of San Soo and Bak Fu Pai. I mean, compared to, Taekwondo and karate and Aikido and BJJ, everybody's, at least heard of these. But a big problem one thing that I appreciated about your teaching style, and that I think really resonated with me, is the sort of informality of it, which I think is much more traditionally Chinese. Whereas in Japanese styles, they tend to be very rigid and formalized. The Chinese way is a little bit more informal, people gathering in the backyard or or in a private residence and just kind of messing around with stuff. And so and when I started training at your school, you were teaching San Soo and Bak Fu Pai in 2 different classes, and the San Soo focused on the reality-based self-defense aspects. The Bak Fu Pai focused on the internal aspects, and it was a mixture of forms. There was a Bak Fu Pai form, and you also taught Qigong. A lot of the traditional Tai Chi movements kind of chopped up and taught as individual Qigong patterns, and then of course push hands was a part of that. So for those who've never heard of these styles, San Soo and Bak Fu Pai, every style has its own legends, its own lore kind of goes along with it. And so the lore that goes along with Bak Fu Pai, aka White Tiger Kung Fu, is its internal family style, passed down to Doo Wai from his father, and the lore is that it was at one time it was taught to the imperial bodyguards as a deadly fighting art. And in fact, it was said to be so deadly that the only time anybody ever saw Bak Fu Pai in action was right before they were killed by it. And it's just stories. Of course, all martial arts have their stories. But I told this to some friends of mine one time, and then I posed a question. Well, if nobody ever sees it until right before they die, how does it get passed on? And without skipping a beat, one of my friends said, "Ghosts."
Well, the Chinese believe in ghosts.
Yeah, so that, I guess historically that maybe was a traditional way of learning Bak Fu Pai from ghosts. But certainly Doo Wai is well known and highly respected in the internal martial arts world, particularly for iron palm training to strengthen the striking surfaces and be able to break things with your hands. He's a tiny little skinny petite old Chinese guy who can just break coconuts open like in the blink of an eye. So that's kind of the background of that style. And the interesting thing about it is Doo Wai lived and taught in the San Diego area since I'm actually not sure how long, like at least since the 1980s, and like probably before that, right?
The 70s.
Like put in the 70s. So, and Bak Fu Pai, aka White Tiger Kung Fu, has spread out a little bit, but it's mostly located in Southern California, San Diego, LA. It hasn't really spread a whole lot beyond that.
Right.
So, the connection with Bak Fu Pai is with San Soo, Kung Fu San Soo, was brought to San Diego by a guy named Jimmy Woo, who supposedly it was his family style, learned from his grandfather. And the lore on this style is that Jimmy Woo was taught by his grandfather, who was a recognized and respected Grandmaster of Kung Fu San Soo. And when the Japanese occupied China and when they occupied Hong Kong, I guess, in World War II, they wanted to eliminate all the people who were good at fighting. So they held these matches to challenge the highest ranking Kung Fu masters versus the Japanese karate champion. And so the story goes, Jimmy Woo's grandfather fought the Japanese karate champion in a public duel with all of his students present, and killed the Japanese champion in 3 seconds flat. It was a fight to the death. He killed him in 3 seconds flat. And then he and all of his students were summarily mowed down by machine gun fire. And little Jimmy was the only one to escape to the U.S. and preserve the family style, which actually if I recall correctly, it was it was actually the original family style was very similar to Choi Li Fut or a variant of Choi Li Fut, but
Exactly.
but San Soo, basically, it's really unique in martial arts. And I'd say San Soo is not really a martial art at all in the common sense of the term, because most people think of a martial art as a particular set of techniques or a particular set of movements. And you do this form, you do these movements of this is a judo throw, and this is a taekwondo kick, and this is a karate punch, and the style is defined by the movements. But San Soo is not defined by any specific set of movements. It's defined by two things really: a free form training methodology where you're working with another person and you have no idea what they're going to do. You have no idea how they're going to attack you. You have no idea what you're going to do. You have no idea how you're going to respond. It's completely free form, and the explicit aim is to incapacitate the attacker in some way. So you're not just going for submission or escape. You're going for incapacitation as the as the baseline. You're assuming that it's a life or death situation, and the highest level of force is required. Because the way I conceive of it, most martial arts training prepares you for the 0 to 99% level of the threat range, but that training then fails at the very top of the threat range. Whereas if you train to handle that top 1% of the threat range, then anything lower than that will be relatively trivial. So Kung Fu San Soo is what I consider to be kind of like the granddaddy of what's come to be called reality-based self-defense, in that it's explicitly training for combat, life or death, worst case scenario as the baseline, and it's not defined by a set of techniques, but by a set of principles that are applied in free-form training where there's no set techniques of any kind. And Jimmy Woo lived and taught in San Diego from the 1960s to the 1990s, and he taught Jerry Peterson among many others. And Jerry Peterson developed a program for the Navy. He did a lot in his own right to spread and popularize Kung Fu San Soo, but still, largely, it hasn't really spread much. A little bit, but very little beyond Southern California, like LA, San Diego, and a little bit other places, but not much. So I happened to, without even realizing it, I just happened to be lucky enough to, after I graduated from college and relocated to San Diego for graduate school, I happened to be going to the city where both of these guys lived and taught, unbeknownst to me. And not only that, but I happened to come into contact with maybe the one guy who actually learned from both of them and brought these two systems together into really the most complete and integral approach to martial arts that I've seen just about anywhere. So that's the background on Kung Fu San Soo and Bak Fu Pai, and why I just feel really lucky and blessed that I might have never heard of these if just the right set of happy coincidences hadn't happened.
Well, I'm the same way. Like I said, I just happened to walk past Jerry's school one day in a part of town I never went to. I just happened to be there. So, yeah, it was just serendipity. Same thing. And same thing with Doo Wai. So, but yeah, they're all right there. That was pretty neat. And you talk about San Soo, you said it was a methodology. And I think that's best describes it. It's a way to work out. I think any martial art, once the students do their stuff, they could do a San Soo type workout and it would benefit anybody. I know I mentioned form and function before. The Tai Chi is where you learn the form, how to move. But most arts teach you that, and then they'll go to tournaments and they'll teach you how to fight a certain way, but with a lot of rules and so forth. But with most martial artists, even I shouldn't say most, but a lot. But even though they've had a lot of training, when they get in a real fight, all those pretty forms and stuff go right out the window, and they just end up doing what, you know, any 16-year-old kid knows how to do: swing punches and kicks and stuff. But when you work out, I think, like San Soo for a long period of time, and you get used to that, I can't imagine fighting, you know, just trying to throw punches and stuff. I mean, you know, the whole idea about getting inside and the balance and stuff. There should be no need actually to throw punches. I think the best martial artist is where nobody gets hurt, and not necessarily because you run. I never subscribed to that. I never liked that idea, but you should be able to handle a situation where nobody gets hurt, but the other guy knows for sure, yeah, I don't think I want to fight this guy. So I think with San Soo, you know, because that was the in close. It was getting in close and using your whole body. It wasn't just throwing punches from 3-4 feet away from each other like typically happens in tournaments and stuff. So yeah, it's just it gives you an opportunity to practice your art in a very practical and real way. Because you know, the Tai Chi form, I mean, for example, and by the way, I never learned the Tai Chi form. I never did. You know, I just learned little bits and pieces. But I think it's better to take a few moves and learn how to do a few moves really well, rather than, you know, I know the 122 move form or whatever it is. Yeah, but how well?
That's a great point. In the old Chen village, back before, you know, the modern version of it, it was said that every part of the village had their own specialty. So like the southern part of the village would do like this one move really well. Another part of the village would do a different move really well. And another part of the village would do a different move really well. And over time, the best guys all, you know, they all communicated, they were all working together. And it took some time, and it formed this long 75 movement forms and 108 movements. And, you know, it's the whole point of the form is if you can memorize it, you can just kind of hand it to someone. Now they have it, they can practice. And by doing the form over and over, you learn Tai Chi principles, you learn how to be soft and how to hold your balance. But you're right, every technique is the important thing, not the form. The form is a great way to take it and to practice on your own, but it's not the martial art. The martial art is every single technique has 30, 50, 100 applications, and every person's own skills and abilities and their strengths and weaknesses come into play when you're doing one technique. You don't have to do 100, just need one.
Exactly. And if you know one move really well, that could be all you ever need. I mean, you know, but I think San Soo gives you, well, really, it's not one move. It's all moves and it's no moves.
No
all together. I think.
Yeah, actually, I love what you said about you could apply San Soo training principles to any kind of martial art, because I mean, what it really is you're modeling the physics and physiology of whatever you're doing, and you can insert. It's like I think of it like a gumbo. You can put in whatever ingredients you want, whether it's punching, striking, kicking, takedowns, leverage, you know, whatever techniques you want to try out or you want to get good at, you can throw that into the mix, and you can actually use it in a realistic simulation. And in particular, there was there's a guy I met who was actually from the East Coast, but he had heard of both. He was a longtime karate guy, but he had heard of both Bak Fu Pai and San Soo, and he read books about them, never actually encountered them. And it turned out we had this connection because the style of karate that he studied was had a connection a couple generations back with White Tiger Kung Fu, and there was some crossover. And also he told me that he read a book on San Soo. I don't remember which one it was, but it was one of the more well-known books on San Soo. And he said just from reading that book and understanding and implementing the principles into his sparring, like the idea of taking up space and cutting off options. He said his sparring partners noticed and asked him what he was doing differently because his sparring got so much better just from reading about San Soo and incorporating the principles into what he was already doing.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, the principles, again, universal. They're universal. So
I want to talk. I also to put this into context. I want to talk a little bit about my own martial arts journey and kind of how I came to this because I think it's really illustrative. Starting with there's a few things relevant here. I basically started doing martial arts when I was a kid and never really stopped. I started when I was 10. I actually started with Taekwondo. It was the kind of place where you show up for the regular testing every 2 months and you move through the ranks. So I started at age 10, had a black belt at age 12, a second degree black belt at age 14. And after that, I decided to branch out and I studied all different types of external martial arts at that point. After that point, including Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Brazilian martial arts. For the first 12 years, there's just all different types of external martial arts. And then another thing that's relevant is I grew up as a rational, materialistic atheist in the Bible Belt with no concept of spiritual consciousness whatsoever. But I studied math and physics in college, and I went to a liberal arts school where you have to study some of everything. So the religion elective that I studied was Buddhism. And I learned all kinds of cool stories in there, which I'd always enjoyed, cool old stories like the Greek myths and the Panchatantra. And it was these cool old stories, including the one about Prince Siddhartha Gautama sitting under the ficus tree and having the Satori, the awakening experience, and arising as the Buddha, the awakened one. And it didn't really mean much to me at the time, other than just cool old stories and interesting intellectual exercises. And then I graduated from college, moved to San Diego for graduate school, and started looking for new martial arts learnings. I was in a new city, find a new martial arts school to go to, and I happened to see a flyer for the Kung Fu Academy, and I thought, well, that sounds like something interesting and new, because Kung Fu could be 1,000 things. It's not. Kung Fu isn't a style; it's just Chinese for martial arts. So it's like, well, that could be anything. But if it had been called the Tai Chi Academy, I probably wouldn't have gone, because I actually tried Tai Chi once when I was in college, and I found I didn't have the patience for it. I was all into like jumping around and kicking high and backflips and spin kicks and all that stuff. In reality, I developed a very high level of athleticism. I could get my body to do all kinds of cool tricks and stunts, and I was highly precise and coordinated. But I actually couldn't have fought my way out of a wet paper bag at the time, and deep down on some level I knew it. And so what happened when I showed up at this school, the Kung Fu Academy, it turned out that it taught internal martial arts, largely based in the Tai Chi classics, and put it together with effective self-defense training, effective realistic self-defense training. And internal martial arts is the focus is on developing a meditative state of awareness, moving slowly. You're noticing your breathing, you're paying attention to sensations you're feeling inside your body. And I noticed when I started doing this, my martial arts started getting better. My ability to my awareness and control over my own body started to improve. And there was in fact this one moment, one evening when I was in my room practicing, when I was just moving slowly, breathing, feeling sensations. And there was this one moment where all of a sudden, everything in the entire universe was completely different. And at the same time, everything was exactly the same. Nothing had changed at all. And the first thought that went through my head was, oh, that's what that was. That's what they were talking about in those old stories. That just happened. And I realized that this experience that people spend years and decades and lifetimes striving after and seeking, and that I didn't even really believe in, just kind of fell out of the sky and landed in my lap. Like, whoa, where'd that come from? And so there were a number of things that happened in conjunction with that, but one of them is that my martial arts ability, my physical ability just skyrocketed. And what it was really like was I had been the whole previous 12 years, as I've been collecting all these techniques and tricks, I was kind of like somebody who's an amateur in some activity and collects all the cool gear. But collecting all the cool gear doesn't make you good at it. You know, you can have all the best gear, but it doesn't make you an expert. It doesn't make you a master. And it was as I become aware and be in control of my body, of my body, then I found I could also therefore be aware of and be in control of somebody else's body. And it was as if I suddenly gained access to the benefits of the previous 12 years of training. I suddenly knew how to use all the tools I'd been collecting and accumulating. So my martial arts ability transformed more in the first 6 months of training this way than it had in the previous 12 years. It was like it all caught up at once. Mm-hmm. And a funny twist to that story, it turned out like 15 years later, fast forward 15 years later. And what I also wanted to say about this was the first major spiritual awakening of my life that I consider to be the start of my own personal mind-body mastery journey. And up to this time, I had really existed entirely up here, entirely like my top left hemisphere of my brain. This was the point in time when I started to inhabit all of this, and I actually fully access and live in my entire body. And so I realized that there was something to this. You know, it wasn't on the label. It wasn't like it was just a kung fu school. You know, I was trying to learn some cool martial arts. But fast forward 15 years, and I did a course that teaches Vipassana meditation, which the story on it is it's supposedly the original meditation technique discovered and taught by the Buddha. And it's taught in the form of a 10-day silent course where you basically live like a monk, meditate for 6 to 8 hours a day, don't speak, don't communicate to anyone, don't make eye contact. And the technique is taught over the course of several days, but I get there and basically this is what it boils down to. I shit you not. I get there and this is what they teach. You sit still, pay attention to your breathing, notice all the sensations inside your body. That's what it is. So I was like, oh, really? You don't say. I think there might actually be something to this. I mean, I was No, I wasn't sitting still. I was moving slowly, but breathing, paying attention to sensation. I mean, universal principles are universal, and I was really playing with fire at the time and didn't even realize it. But I'm sharing this story just because this is what learning San Soo and Bak Fu Pai together, internal martial arts and reality-based self-defense in a combined way. This is what really unlocked all of martial arts for me and gave me a framework for understanding all the seemingly disconnected bits and pieces that I'd collected over the years. And this was when I was able to answer for myself the one question that nags in the back of the mind, or maybe in the subconscious of almost every martial artist, almost anybody who studies martial arts or self-defense, is wondering in the back of their mind, will this work? Will this really work? If I need this to, if the shit hits the fan, if it comes down to it, will I be able to do this? Is this going to work? And I'd always been like had the anxiety from wondering, so I never knew. Like on some level, I knew if I don't know for sure it's going to work, like I don't know it's going to work, and that means it probably won't. But this was when I was able to answer that question for myself, what will work and what won't, based on my own direct felt experience. Because it's one thing to think about it and theorize about it. It's another thing to physically put hands on and run the actual physical experiments with and in your own body and with another person's body. So if you if you want to know if your martial arts will really work, there's only one way. You have to actually run the experiment. And this was when I learned to do that.
Hey, what kind of experiment? I mean, technically, the only way to know if it'll work in a fight is to go get in a fight.
You'll be a bouncer.
Well, by running the experiment, I mean experiment physically with and actually this is present in both San Soo and in internal martial arts. In San Soo, of course, there's free-form training where you're experimenting, you're playing with stuff, you're saying, oh, let me try this, let me see what will happen. And also in push hands, you're doing the same thing. You're trying stuff and seeing what happens physically, experimenting in a safe way. Because another thing that's unique about San Soo is there's the idea in martial arts of pressure testing. We got to try it full force against a resisting opponent to know if it's really going to work. But if you think about it, there are three elements that need to be in place to cause injury. And in San Soo, the aim is injury. The actual outcome that you're aiming for is injury. So in order for there to be injury, there has to be force, speed, and accuracy. And if you want to avoid injury, you can remove one of those elements. In many martial arts, they keep speed and accuracy and they remove force. And that's essentially like touch sparring, like kind of like what you're talking about, standing back and throwing punches and kicks. It's basically a glorified form of playing tag. Or if you want to keep speed and force, you remove accuracy, and then you're intentionally missing. You're either stopping early or you're going past the target. You're training yourself to miss on purpose. Whereas if you don't need a human body to develop speed. As Rory Miller says, I've never seen anybody go fast when they're scared. So if you decide to keep accuracy and power but remove speed, then you can train in a way that's both safe and realistic. And if you are being honest with yourself, which is a big part of learning Kung Fu San Soo, is learning to be honest with yourself, you can accurately and realistically model the physics and physiology of what you're doing. And the training can turn into an experimental lab where, like you said, it's a way of learning, training yourself to solve any problems that you might encounter. If you wonder, like, oh, what happens if somebody does this? Well, let's do that and try it and see what works.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And the speed that's the easy part. I mean, if you get the accuracy and the precision, the speed will be there. That's never the problem. And I think another thing about the Kung Fu, and this is the Tai Chi, and this is a big thing with Tai Chi. Tai Chi means the grand ultimate. There's the yin and there's the yang. Most martial arts are pretty yang. Strength on strength. The advantage of San Soo is that when you're receiving the technique, you are practicing the yin. You're practicing going with it. When your partner hits you in the ribs or whatever, you're trained to go like that, right? Mm. So if you get in a fight, you'll just naturally do that. There's the yin and the yang.
Yeah, you learn to yield very, very well.
Mm. Exactly. And the masters used to say, train the yin. Don't worry about the yang. The yin will be there. Because when someone is yang, if you're yang, then it's just going to be the strongest guy is going to win. If you're yin, it's like I've said many times, no amount of strength can overcome perfect weakness. If the guy comes at you and you're just not there, you yield instead of trying to resist, he's going to get off balance. A good chance he'll get off balance. And now he's expended all his yang. He's extended himself. He has no more power left. You, on the other hand, having gone yin by yielding, you're gathering all your energy. And then you have all that energy to put back on him. And most people don't know how to do yin. So when he's expended his yang, he has nothing left. When you go back to him with all that energy that you've taken by just simply moving back, he's got no more money left, and you're just fatter than could be. And so it's really that simple. And so that's why they say train the yin. Don't worry about the yang. And so that's the thing about San Soo. That's another really big element of San Soo is when you are receiving the technique, because you don't know what the guy's going to do to you, right, Dane? I mean, you know that. Or, Andrew, have you done San Soo, Andrew?
I've had some experience with San Soo and with Dane, of course, but I never went to a school formally and trained it properly.
But you know what I'm talking about then, how they
we call it reaction simulation training, but it's basically the same thing.
Yeah. So when you're receiving the technique, you don't know what the other guy's going to do to you, so you got to move quick or you'll get hurt.
Of course.
The thing about San Soo and training reflexes is really interesting because you're simulating the physics and physiology of of injury. So that means whatever your partner does, if they're hitting you or whatever, you are allowing your body to respond in the way that it would reflexively respond to being injured that way. And that allows your partner that gives your partner a realistic model of what to expect when they cause that injury. And it also trains your body to respond to anything in the way that mitigates the damage to the greatest possible extent. Exactly. And so I've noticed over the years that and it's partly attributable to San Soo, partly attributable to push hands. I mean, they both really train the same set of skills in a different way. But I've noticed like my reflexes are there's actually a whole self-defense system out there that's based on the flint startle response, and it's a really awesome system. I've a lot of respect for it and everything. They work with a lot of military and law enforcement tactical training and stuff like that. And it's based on the idea that when the instinctive innate startle flinch response is kind of putting your hands up like this, and that's true. That's just kind of the default untrained reaction is. And the whole system is based on, well, this is what you're going to do anyway, so train to get really good at doing this and then transitioning into the next thing. But what I've noticed is because of San Soo in particular, if I get startled out of the blue by something, and it's like I don't even see coming, my body will automatically respond to move me away from whatever the danger is, to keep my balance, to orient back on the source of danger. So like if I don't see something and I bump my head, then my whole center will drop down, keeping my spine vertical. Or if something touches me from behind, I move away from it and then turn back towards it. Like if you startle a cat almost, like that just has come about as a natural result, that my reflexes to anything that happens, like if I trip and fall or somebody else trips and falls and I go to catch them, my reflexes are highly attuned to respond in the most efficient way to just any kind of random thing that I might be startled by. So there's really, like, if you want to train yourself to respond to being surprised or startled, there's absolutely nothing better in the martial arts world.
I agree. I totally agree. I totally agree. And yeah, I you know where I live, Dane, right? You've been out here.
Out in Julian.
Yeah, and it's fairly rugged country. I mean, well, anyway, I fall a lot, and I've taken some bad falls, but never, maybe I'll get a little cut, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Actually, I got a little story. I remember one day, and it's a hill, right? So I fell, and there was rocks and everything, and it seems like it's all slow motion. And so I'm okay. I got to put my hand there and my foot there. And anyway, I ended up doing 2 rolls, and I finally stopped. I mean, I was just going with it. Then when I finally stopped, my face was about yay far away from a big cactus patch. I mean, literally. But it's because I went with it and I was controlled.
Yeah.
And so when I saw what was coming, I was able to prevent it. Whereas I think if I had panicked, I probably would have rolled right into that cactus. So, and just a lot of things like that. A lot of times I fall, but definitely the Kung Fu training comes in handy. And yeah.
Speaking
one thing we haven't talked about a little bit, but I know you, Dane, you know this, and Andrew, you too probably, but there's the whole idea of Wu Chi, right? Mm-hmm. Tai Chi being movement, Wu Chi being stillness.
Yep.
And movement comes from stillness. It's stillness first and then movement. And so your experience with the monks there, when you would say just sit there and be still, was very appropriate.
Yeah, Vipassana is like sitting Wu Chi.
Yeah. I once had a student, Humberto. I don't know if you knew him. He was the big black guy from Cuba. He studied in Havana with the guy, and they were not allowed to teach Kung Fu there. They could only teach boxing. But his teacher was a Chinese man who was teaching boxing over there. And so Humberto goes there for his first lesson, and the guy puts him next to the wall and tells him, hold his hands a foot away from the wall, like that. So Humberto did that. The guy walked away, and Humberto stood there for about 10 minutes, and his arms were killing him. And he told the teacher, he says, I can't hold him anymore. And his teacher said, okay, well, the lesson's over. So Humberto figures, okay, well, I passed that test. I'll come by tomorrow, and he'll start showing me stuff. So he goes there for his lesson. The guy puts him in front of the wall, says, now hold your hands like this, a foot away from the wall. Anyway, he said that went on for 3 months, and Humberto put up with it. But Humberto was a good martial artist, and I think he learned from that. And yeah, if you can hold your hands like that, because what do you? That's not easy. You have to build up a certain strength, and it's also a mental thing that things don't bother you so much for some reason. It just takes a lot of tension away, and which obviously is going to help if you do get in a fight, not to be worried about it. So
there's a great saying
Yeah, I think-
in internal martial arts about how don't teach your students to stand because they will beat you. Because as they progress, if they did standing practice from early on, by the time they're 5-10 years in, they're better than you. They're stronger, they're younger, so they have that advantage. And now they also have that steady posture, and they know how to hold their balance, and they know how to relax their muscles. Well, now they can beat you.
Well, yeah. But then again, I've always thought that the goal of a teacher is always to make students better than them.
That's true. I like the old Japanese way. It's like when the teacher, when it's time for him to retire, the student would kill him. They have a fight to the death.
I'm really into that.
Speaking of old stories, I want to hear at least one story about Jerry Peterson and at least one story about Doo Wai.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry Peterson, okay. We know Jerry Peterson. He was in the special forces, so he kind of saw a lot of stuff going on.
He was a tunnel rat in Vietnam, right?
He was, yeah.
That's one of the, yeah. You gotta have brass cojones to do that job.
They would
One of the most dangerous positions,
Yeah,
definitely in that war.
And he was a pretty cool cook, you know. But and then Doo Wai. Well, Doo Wai was just a character. That's all I can say. You know, Doo Wai doesn't have a very good reputation amongst 98% of the martial art world. And Doo Wai I saw it over and over. He would purposely make himself look bad. He would purposely flub techniques. And I don't know why he did that, but I saw him do that with a lot of people. And then, of course, they would leave, and maybe that's what he wanted. I don't know.
Yeah, if you don't like the student, show them something that, I'm not that good. Oh, screw this guy. I'm out of here.
Well, I seem to recall, didn't you say he's basically a recluse?
Oh, yeah. I think the first 2 years I knew him, I don't think he left his apartment once. And then I remember going over there once, and he said, "You want to go out to a restaurant?" And I was, "Really? You want to leave?" And most of that time, he would spend up in his bedroom. He had it all set up with a lot of video equipment and all. You know, I used to make movies. But he was a pretty odd guy. But he was the Chinese. What's the word I'm looking for? I forget. I can't think of the word. Strange guy.
Strange guy.
But you know, if you knew him and you really got to know him, he was a wonderful guy. He's like a father. You know, like Mr. Miyagi.
Mm-hmm.
For most
sounds like an
people,
older school kung fu guy, like you guys were saying. He's definitely older for sure.
And
the old one, like 4 or 6 students max. And so if you have 10, 15 students, like, I can't handle this anymore, get rid of 5, 10 of them. And then I got these 5, I'll cultivate them. Yeah.
And
I don't know how he got money or anything like that, but he was always, he lived okay.
Okay.
So I don't think he was teaching out to get money. He never charged me anything. Never charged me a penny.
Nice. That's a great teacher. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I do remember hearing you say about Doo Wai was you would sometimes you would bring friends that wanted to learn from him, and he would just make a video, do a form, turn on his video camera, do a form, pop out the video, and go, okay, here you go. Study that for 6 months and then come back. That'll be $200.
Yeah. Which, if the student did that, it'd be well worth $200. It'd be worth way more than that. I don't teach too much anymore, but one second. There we go. I don't teach too much anymore, but anybody that does want to teach them, I have a little video up on a website, and there's, I think, about 6 moves. And I say, memorize those moves, and when you can do them, come back to me.
Oh.
Never so far.
Never. It's only 6
So-
moves.
And I also,
They're just 6 simple moves, really. I think there's the ward off, the roll back, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just very simple. And nobody's ever come back. So, because the last time I did teach, I was teaching here in Julian, and I was teaching that little ditty. It was like 6 moves. I call them sets instead of forms. I call them sets.
Sure.
6 moves. We do them to the right and then to the left. Same moves back and forth. And I taught those moves for about a year, and nobody in the class could do them by themselves. Now, I don't know, maybe I wasn't a good teacher or something, but yeah. Obviously, we never got to the principles very much because, they didn't even know the moves. And the reason for the moves in a form, I think, is so that you have common ground to talk about the principles behind those movements. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So that's the only reason we have forms at all. It's just so we have a common ground. So that so that we're all So I could teach them how to throw their arm out in a certain way. But in reality, of course, in a fight, it might have to go this way, that way, that way. Who knows? So it was always, the form is just common ground to teach the principles. So we're all doing the same move. But once that move is mastered, forget it. In fact, they used to say, once you understand the principles behind the form is meaningless.
It's a good point.
I don't know.
I've learned 80 forms, and I only practiced 5 or 6. You learn them, and then you forget them. That's the best.
One more thing I also remember you saying about Doo Wai is he hated Kung Fu as a kid, but his dad made him learn it because it was a family style.
Yeah.
But he's still, like, nonetheless, he went on to become really highly recognized. I know he said he has a bad reputation with like 90-something% of the martial arts community, but the people that I've met who know him, which is only a certain subset, but they really speak highly of him. That people who know, especially people who are into Iron Palm, really respect and admire Doo Wai.
Oh yeah, there's nobody close along those lines.
So I guess it just goes to show you can get good at something if you put in the time, even if you hate it.
Yeah. And I'm sure you grew up in a family where you do what Dad tells you to do. No questions asked. Dad doesn't care if you like it.
So, Rich, I wanted to ask, since you've been practicing for so long, what's your personal practice these days? What do you do to keep yourself fit martially?
Well, I have a little area outside. I live out here in the woods, and I have a little, I tell Dane the other day, it's 4x5. And that's my dojo. The biggest thing I work on, I've been working on for a long time, and honestly, I don't know if I'm going to work on anything else, because I think to me, this is eureka. This is the ultimate. But I've been working on moving from my center. Think of yourself as a skeleton. Forget your muscles, forget your flesh. Just look at yourself as bones strung together. And you know what a nunchuck is, right? It's 2 sticks with a little string in the middle. Well, a human body is 9 sticks all joined together with strings. And there's 4 are from the center down. Your hips, your knee, and your ankle, and the small of your back, where your back joins the pelvic girdle. And then the next joint up is about two vertebrae up, and that's called the Migmen. That's your center. It's between the second and third lumbar vertebra. And it's a very special point. It's actually where your diaphragm attaches. And so every time you breathe, you should feel that pulling back and forth. And then you have another joint, your shoulder blades, your shoulder, your elbow, and your wrist, even your fingers. Leave that out for now. But when you want to move, all you move is your center. And then depending upon what your mind is thinking, I want to move my hand this way. I want to hit that ball. I want to do this. I want to do an elbow. I want to do a kick. I want to hit that spot. I want to push that spot. Your mind has to be very, very clear. And then what you want to do. And then your center takes that information and moves appropriately. And then the rest happens automatically. Just like a nunchuck. It's 2 sticks, but you're only holding one, right?
Yeah.
You don't even touch the second one. It doesn't do anything. It reacts because of what you do with the first one. And that's the same way when you move your center first, it's going to send a wave up and down. When your center moves, it's going to your spine's going to ripple. It's just like a snake. I mean, think about it. And then that's going to cause your shoulder blade to move. That's going to cause your shoulder to move. Then your elbow, and then finally your wrist. So I've just been really working on moving from the center only, and I do totally random moves, but it's how I move. So I don't know if this will work, but maybe a little bit here. It's good enough. But instead of going, for example, if I want to wave my arm like that, I'm just doing that now with my shoulder muscles and so forth. Just leave my hands loose, just turn my center just a little bit, and it goes. But notice there's a delay. Center, spine, shoulder blade, shoulder, elbow, wrist. See? I want to move. I want to do an uppercut. I'll move my center, boom, and then everything goes. You got to wait for it. You got to move this and wait. Even shifting weight. And on my right leg, I turn and I move my center that way. That's all I do. I just move my center, and then I have to shift. But notice the delay. Try this out. Just move your stomach back and forth, and just be relaxed, and just move just push it back and then move it suddenly, and let yourself go, and you're going to fall forward unless you take a step backward. Same thing. But it's this first. I want to go to my right. I throw my center to the right, and then the rest of me has to go. They say the power comes from your back, and that's what they're talking about. The rest, you're like it's like a 4-section staff. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
That's what your body is like. You just whip your center, and then the rest will just unwind quite naturally. And that's the key, because your hands are the private. Your head is the commander. It says, I want to push that spot right there, that precise spot. Your center moves, and it has its own intelligence that as long as it's connected with your mind and you're clear on what you want to do, which is why if you're freaked out and afraid in a fight, it's not going to do a thing. But if you're clear, your mind is clear, and and you move your center, you don't have to do anything else. The rest will just happen. So that's what I've been working on. Just moving by moving my center. I've been playing with my center.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I've always that was one of the things they've always told us in Tai Chi. Everything comes from the center. The center governs all the movements after that. You have to relax your arms. It's like your arms are broken. You can't really use any muscles in your arms. As soon as you have tension, you break the connection anyway. So don't do that. Just move from your center.
Exactly. It's I found it's hard to do.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I think it's easy to think that I'm doing it when I'm really not. I'm just moving my old way, you know, with just waving the arm through the air. But like I said, that's kind of all I've been doing. So yeah, I just get out there and stand in this little area, and you know, and I can do footwork in little area. I can do all kinds of footwork stuff. Yeah. I mean, back, forth, boom, 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 boom. You can't see my feet, but they look good.
And one of the old Tai Chi proverbs is, as long as you have 3 by 3 foot, you can go to paradise. You don't need that much room. As long as you can stand still and wave your arms around, you got plenty of room.
You know what? It takes 30 seconds to sweep it off.
Yeah, I was actually going to tell you, Rich. This is my my little personal workout space I have here. It's actually 8 by 10. So
it's same thing, man. That's all you need. That's all you need. Plenty.
I want to do a little bit of disambiguation here coming up, and this part's going to be really interesting, and I want you to get in on this fun, Andrew, because over the years I like to post a lot of stuff. I've posted stuff on Facebook and Twitter, and one of the things. One of the things that I got from learning with you is you had these certain little sayings that were really profound, and just I'd hear the same thing. You'd say it over and over and over again, and finally it would stick in. You know, it would just kind of get stuck there. And there is still a lot of those little sayings that you said that I still remember and use and teach to my students that can convey some really profound wisdom. And I post a lot of Richisms on Facebook. I'll say stuff that's my Sifu and said this, and my Sifu said that. But I have to come clean, because actually only some of the things that I have claimed you've said, you've actually said. So you like if I post something. It may or may not actually be something Rich said. It may just be something that I thought of and thought sounded really cool later. But I'm gonna do a little game here to disambiguate. I'm gonna say 3 things at a time, and 2 of them are something that you actually said, and 1 of them is something that you didn't.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna test your memory. Here. and also I want Andrew, I want you to guess which one of these is the real thing and which one is made up. Okay. So the first one is the saying is my Sifu said, invest in loss. The second one is step light, arrive heavy. And the third one is, one time my Sifu killed a ninja in his sleep. A, B, and C. Which one is made up?
Well,
you should go first, Rich.
No, I want to hear your guess.
All right, fine. I'll go first. Which one's made up? I would say C is made up. Like, you did not say that.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
I like step light, arrive heavy. That's a very good one, because it's all about swiftness. And once you're there, okay, now I deliver power. I don't have to deliver power out here. I'm far away. There's nothing to do.
Right. You take the center first. And in all honesty, Rich never claimed to have killed a ninja. That doesn't mean he actually didn't, though. Absence of evidence, not evidence of absence. Same. So okay, here's the second one.
Trap.
A, Rich said, don't resist and don't insist. B, the soft sinks and the hard rises. And C is when Rich was asked, what's your opinion on gun control? He said, keep the weapon close to your body and maintain a firm grip at all times.
Just for the sake, I'll say he didn't say the first one.
Yeah, me too. I don't remember saying a C either, though, but definitely not A.
Don't resist and don't insist.
Oh,
I do like that. But,
okay.
Yeah.
I thought you said something else. C.
Yes.
The last
And
one.
don't resist and don't insist, and B, the soft sinks and the hard rise. So meaning the soft tissue of the body sinks, the hard tissue, the bones rise, the upward reaction force from the floor.
I
That
thought you were
was
talking about incest.
I like the gun control one a lot. I do.
Okay. Insist. Got it.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's 3. Where the mind goes, energy flows. A. And B. Move with a calm mind, not tense muscles. And C. When Rich was asked, what's the best advantage to have in a fight? Strength, speed, endurance? He answered, mechanical advantage. A, B, or C?
Gotta go with C.
What's
Yeah,
your guess,
sorry.
Andrew?
Well, as for something he didn't say,
Yeah.
I would say C, just because the other ones were quick and pithy.
Yes. But this is something that you totally could have said, because I mean mechanical advantage. Like
Yeah.
Leverage.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Doesn't matter how
it kind
fast you
of-
are if you have leverage.
it's not wrong.
No, I just didn't say it.
Okay. Here's the next one.
No, okay.
A. Use 4 ounces to deflect 1,000 pounds. B. To go down, first go up. To go left, first go right. And then C. Sometimes people would ask him questions like, Sifu, what would you do if someone did XYZ? And he'd always answer, I don't know, try it and see. And then when they try it, he kills them. A, B, or C?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say C.
That's correct. I never saw Rich kill somebody.
This is a simple test.
Okay. Next one is a little bit more tricky.
You should never see it, by the way.
Yeah, it happens too fast with the naked eye, of course. Okay, so A. All martial arts stem from the ancient art of hitagai.
I like that.
B. There is no magic move, but there is a magic way to move. And C. Rich has a simple policy for challengers. He's willing to take on anybody in a boxing match as long as it's without gloves. And the same is true for a grappling match, as long as it's on concrete.
Wow, Rich, you're that's pretty ballsy of you. Let's get into a wrestling match on concrete.
Which is it, A or C?
Go ahead, Rich.
Well, the whole idea behind saying that would be, I hope I'd scare him.
It's intimidating.
But that would be A.
No, that is something
Where
you
energy
said.
goes, where the mind goes, energy flows.
Oh,
I love that. I
okay.
see it all
No.
the time.
No,
What was
I love that run.
all martial arts stem from the ancient art of hitagai.
I did say that, but
Yeah.
of course I never really meant it. And you forgot the art of kick a man.
Kick man.
Hit a guy and kick a man. That's where they all
Well, what can you say? Universal principles are universal.
Yeah.
Ever since the first cave person picked up a rock to bash in the head of another cave person, which goes back to that. Okay, here's no, for that one it's also C. I never actually knew Rich to have public challenges, but again, absence of evidence and all that. Okay, so the next one is, all problems are a result of thinking. If you have a problem, just stop thinking. And B, There is no advanced kung fu. There's just basic kung fu you get really good at.
Good.
And C, Rich only wrestles with bears. He says human opponents don't provide enough of a challenge.
Reasonable.
Better go with C, Andrew.
Yeah, I should go with C. I have to go with C. Sorry.
That's correct. I've never actually known Rich to wrestle with bears, although I have known him to be stalked by bobcats.
Well, you do live in Julian. There's probably bears around there.
No, not anymore. Used to be.
No? You killed him. You did it. It was you.
Yeah, that's right. There have been no bears sighted in Julian ever since Rich lived there.
The mountain lions are starting to go down.
Oh, man. Yeah,
Okay,
rough.
next one is the 3 defects. Resisting, using strength versus strength, and getting rid of the opponent. A. And B. In order to function beyond the use of ordinary strength, one must learn to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. And C. Rich created the cure for cancer by making Chuck Norris cry.
That one's true. So we're gonna go with A.
Well, in fact, unfortunately, cancer has not been cured yet. But it turns out Chuck Norris's that thing about Chuck Norris's tears, it turns out to be false. That's the problem.
Yeah, I don't know.
Rich did in fact make Chuck Norris cry, but it turned out that whole thing was phony. Although Rich did actually say both of the first two about the 3 defects: resisting, using strength versus strength, and getting rid of the opponent, and also to function beyond ordinary strength, become comfortable with the uncomfortable. These are actual Rich's words.
No, I really like that second one. One of the things, eat bitter. You probably heard that statement about Kung Fu. And I asked a few friends of mine about this, like in their interpretation what that means. Some of them say, yeah, you just endure the pain. Like those kids, the Shaolin Monastery, they're just holding their leg up by their head for 30 minutes, crying the whole time. Just crying. And the teacher stares at them, waiting for the timer to finish. It's awful. But they learn how to do it. They get really good at it.
Yeah. And they're not going to be freaked out if they happen to get hit a little bit.
No.
Okay, now this one really is tricky. So get ready. A.
Okay.
If no part of the movement is a strike, then any part of the movement can be a strike. B. The movement should be rooted in the feet, powered by the legs, directed by the waist, and expressed through the hands. C. You might go your whole life without getting into a fight, but you probably will fall down. Learning to fall properly is more important than learning how to not fall.
Oh, gosh. See, this one's hard. The other ones were kind of obvious, but this one's hard. I would have to say A, because I love that C one. C is great. Everyone falls. I don't care how good you are at life. You're going to fall down. It's just an inevitability.
I don't know, Dan. I think I said all those things, didn't I?
Well, if you've been listening closely to the rest of the interview, you would know B and C are very sure things about learning, about falling down, and about moving from the center. And actually, yes, A. If no part of the movement is a strike, then any part of the movement could be a strike. I don't specifically remember that one, which isn't to say Rich never said it. And this is a common saying in Tai Chi. And actually this one was also referenced earlier as well about, like the movement and the form. It could be anything. It's not necessarily a strike or a block or whatever. Like it's just a movement, and the applications are myriads. But this is not wrong, but not actually a true Richism.
I
Okay.
think I used to say that.
Maybe you did. Maybe I.
Nobody's never heard it. I would go through phases and saying things, so maybe you weren't around when I was saying that.
So, Rich, as with all your training, what would you say is your favorite martial arts book, or your favorite book that kind of explains this stuff?
Tai Chi Boxing Chronicles.
Okay, Tai Chi Boxing
Chronicles. Another good one is Peter Ralston, Principles of Effortless Power.
Okay.
I think the Tai Chi Boxing Chronicles is out of print. You probably have to pay $250, $300 for it now. Wow. But I think it was pretty good.
I'm going to put a pin in and come back to that. It's actually a really great question. I remember you had a really great collection of books in the dojo. There it is. Okay, here's the next one. A. Overcoming strengths with strengths requires no training. If your kung fu only allows you to overcome smaller, weaker opponents, what good is it? Good kung fu is about overcoming strengths with weakness. B. You can train to be good at fighting, or you can train to be good at moving. And if you can move well, you can do anything well, including fighting. And C. Rich has never been defeated, except for the time he fought himself and won.
Okay. Well, you got to fight yourself every day, so that one's true. And let's go with B.
I don't know about that one, Dane.
C is the false Richism. I've actually never known Rich to be defeated in a fight.
Both are true.
Yeah,
you got to get in one first.
we actually kind of did allude to the other two earlier in the interview as well about overcoming rather than overcoming strengths with strength, which is just kind of the instinctive thing. Any 5-year-old could do it, but learning how to overcome strength with weakness, and also you can be good at fighting or you can be good at moving. If you're good at moving, then you're automatically good at fighting. So train to move. Okay, here's the next one. A. Form requires 2 legs. Function requires 4. B. All this kung fu stuff won't work in outer space. It requires gravity to operate. And C. Rich was mean as a kid. He used to beat up the school bully all the time just for fun.
Well, he didn't start training until later in life, so I don't know if he was ready to beat up the school bully every day. So I'm going to say C.
That's go ahead.
I did beat up the school bully one time.
That's cool. Do you remember anything about that kind of story? I mean, yeah, it's like middle school or something, but
it was like 6th grade or something.
Yeah,
I wrestled him to the ground.
Well, so there actually is a grain of truth to that, and as there may be a grain of truth to all of these. I'm just saying, But you did mention the difference between form and function. Form requires 2 legs, meaning form you can practice on your own, but function requires that you actually interact and experiment with another human body. 4 legs. And next, A. Rich was the guy who killed Houdini with 1 punch. And B is I'll fight if I have to. Rich said, I'll fight if I have to, but no way am I going to volunteer for it. And C, one time Mike Tyson challenged Rich to a fight. Rich just laughed and kicked him in the balls. Poor old Mike never fully recovered, and that's why his voice still sounds the way it does to this day.
I'm going with A because that C one's great. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Actually, this which one is it, Rich?
I'd say C. I'm gonna go with C.
This is a trick because B is the only true Richism. The one about Houdini, I actually don't know. I don't know who that was. I don't know who that guy was that killed Houdini. I might have been Rich. I wasn't around. I don't know what happened to Mike Tyson's voice either. I never actually knew about Rich, about Mike challenging to Rich to a fight. Not to say it couldn't have happened. Maybe before my time.
I didn't.
Okay, so the story goes. Okay, next one is A. The hands never work in isolation. The troops don't work alone. And B. The most important element of fighting is the ability to move your own body. And C. Little known fact, Rich was Bruce Lee's stunt double.
I see the resemblance. Yeah.
My hair was darker.
Yeah, hair was darker.
I'll have to go with C.
Yeah. C it is.
Well, if Rich was Bruce Lee's stunt double, I don't know about it. It was before my time, but A and B are true Richisms. The hands being the troops, like the metaphor you referred to earlier about the mind being the commander, the mind being the general, the waist is the commander, the hands are the troops, the soldiers. The hands are the privates. That's right. They carry out the orders. And the most important element of fighting being the ability to move your own body, to move your own joints. It's not what you can do to somebody else's body. It's how you're able to move your own body that gives you control, and specifically moving from the center. That's what gives you control over everything. Okay, last one here. This one is especially tricky, so you're gonna have to think a little bit on this one too. A. No amount of strength can overcome perfect weakness. B. In push hands, you don't push and you don't use your hands. And C. Rich refuses to participate in the UFC. He thinks it's unsporting since both fighters usually survive.
Damn, Rich, you're cold-blooded, man.
Which is it, A, B, or C?
That's going to be C.
Yeah.
Yes, actually, Rich did actually say, I'll fight if I have to, but no way am I ever going to volunteer to step into a ring. That is a true Richism. So, and B is actually from, or A is actually from this interview. No amount of strength can overcome perfect weakness. And in push hands, you don't push and you don't use your hands. I love this because it sounds very counterintuitive, but I totally get it, because you're not pushing as in like reaching out and exerting force on somebody else. You are moving yourself while you're attached to somebody, and because you're attached to them, they also move, which is different than like pushing somebody away from you. And also, you are in contact with your hands, but you're not using your hands, your arms, your upper body. You're moving from the center. You're moving from the legs and the ground, and moving from the center. So that's a big mindset shift. Most people, when they start doing push hands, they're like, our normal locus of control is up here in the upper body, up in the chest or even the head, and we're always thinking from up here. So when we're pushing, we're always pushing from up here. But in push hands, you learn to sink your locus of control down lower into your body, so that you're actually pushing with your lower body and your center. You're moving from your lower body and your center with everything you do, and your upper body and your arms are just responding to what's going on in your center. So those are true Richisms. So that's
That was fun.
that's the test. I'm glad to see your memory is keeping up.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, it's doing good.
So, yeah, there were some really cool books on your bookshelf. Those ones that you mentioned were definitely some classics, and you still have those handy. I see.
Have the what now?
You still have those handy, the Tai Chi Boxing Chronicle, and
Oh yeah. What, you want to look at it?
yeah, show us that again. That's the if you
Tai Chi Boxing Chronicle. Cool.
yeah, you might it may or may not be available on Amazon. Like you said, it's out of print, but it's definitely one of the classics. A lot of those sayings, a lot of those Richisms, actually, I know came from that book, and also from the Tai Chi classics.
Yeah, in the Yan family, Secret Transmission, Yan family, that's a good one.
And how about another one I remember being on your shelf, but I never read, but I know it was one of your favorite ones, was Warriors of Stillness.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was the book on Wu Chi. Basically, the whole book was about just standing with your arms hanging down, just standing there.
You know, I met a really well-trained internal teacher a few years ago, and I asked him, like, "Hey, what did you do to get so good?" And he said, "Well, I was okay until I met this one teacher. He taught me Yi Chuan, and Yi Chuan is like mind boxing." And he said, I would go to his house. He would have me stand and stare at the wall with my hands relaxed on my sides. And then he would come by every few minutes and just make sure I'm still standing. And I would stand there for 2 hours, 3 hours. And that was my training with that guy for a long time. And I thought, wow, really? Just standing for hours was the thing that made you good. That's really all it is? Okay. So, and I still haven't done 3 hours. I've done like an hour and a half standing.
That's pretty good.
My legs go numb. My feet go numb. It's just like I don't know if I want to do 3 hours. I think I need to go up to it.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, you have to build up to it, certainly, and frequency is more important than frequency and consistency is more important than intensity and duration. In fact, I remember another Richism I remember was when we were standing in some kind of posture. There were all the different postures. Monk begs for rice. Monk holds back 2 oxen. Phoenix spreads its wings, and we would be standing there, and he would say, "This is how you develop internal strength. This is the Kung Fu push-ups, the Kung Fu sit-ups. If you want to develop external strength, you lift weights. If you want to develop Kung Fu strength, internal strength, this is what you do. These are the Kung Fu push-ups, the Kung Fu sit-ups."
Yeah.
And it's and those what?
It builds strength. It definitely makes you stronger.
Yeah. It builds a different,
thick and big. Yeah.
A different really kind of strength. Like I when I am teaching, a lot of times people have a hard time, and I say, "Oh, I know. If we were bouncing around doing jumping jacks and stuff for 30 minutes, it'd be no problem. But all this moving slowly and standing still, it's hard work."
Yeah.
And we actually did one of our recent shows. We talked about what is internal strength, and we talked about the distinction between Jing strength, which is unrefined or clumsy strength, or external strength, and Li strength, which is refined or internal strength. And it's actually a different kind of strength that you develop by standing still and moving slowly than you do by pushing against resistance. It resides in the bones and in the joints instead of in the muscles. Another Richism right there.
Yeah.
The kung fu strength is in the tendons, the ligaments, the connective tissue. That's not in the muscles.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's why I say, think of yourself as a skeleton. Forget you have muscles and flesh. You're just a skeleton, and the tendons and ligaments are the strings that attach all the segments. And you're just a nice whippy thing.
Yeah, I remember you saying, imagine if you got hit with a 9-section staff made out of bones, just being swung. Imagine you got hit by that.
And yet the guy that hits you with it, all he does, he goes, makes a little flip with his wrist.
His wrist and the whole thing.
It's actually the legs that are doing it, so it's powered by legs connected to the ground, but it's the same, all that mass just flying at you. And also a couple of great books you had on your bookshelf were a couple of books by Master Hei Long, Guj Ganji.
Yes.
Was one of them, and I'm pretty sure there's Guj Ganji, which is striking deadly blows to vital targets, and Da Jimingde, which was, I believe, about breaking joints. And those are Master Hei Long has written a lot of books, and a lot of the stuff he writes is kind of silly. Like, it's stuff you could only do if you were like super athletic like him. Like, grab someone's hand and then heel kick them in the chin. It's stuff that only he could he could pull off. But the information, it's just really great, simple, straightforward, basic information about how to cause injury to the human body. When you put the ankle joint in this position, it's vulnerable to force from this direction. The elbow bends this way, and it's vulnerable to force this way. It's really classic, highly valuable information about injury to the human body. Those books in particular. So Master Hei Long is definitely somebody who should be on any serious martial artist bookshelf.
Okay.
And then didn't you also
wrap up?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That I know we could keep going for a while. I just also want to mention the books on Shaolin Chin Na, and there are also two by that guy, Shaolin Chin Na. And what was the other one?
Tai Chi Chin Na.
Right, yeah, Shaolin Chin Na and Tai Chi Chin Na by Yang Juing Ming. Also classics that I first encountered on your bookshelf. So those definitely go in the same category and worth mentioning.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great information in those classics. So
I don't even know. I imagine they have books now. I haven't looked at any martial art books forever, but I bet they have some pretty good ones now.
Yeah. Well, now it's all like online, so there's a lot of video instruction online that has some of these secrets in there. But yeah you're right. I think the books are great because they're so easy to share. You can usually find books pretty easily. Now with the internet, you can get digital copies of the books a lot easier. It's tough to sit through 12 hours of video content. So if someone who goes through, like, say, take one of these great books that you have, and they do a video on almost every technique, or at least a few videos per chapter. And now let's watch that video series versus reading the book. And I have a just personal opinion. I feel like the video series is boring and drawn out, where the book is more concise and straightforward.
Well, and you have to be more involved with the book.
Yeah.
Your mind has to be more into it.
So I'd like to wrap up with a few takeaways. I've got a couple, and I'd like to hear you guys if you have any. But for me, number one is, definitely there's a lot of stuff you can learn, a lot of great stuff you can learn from the classics. Old guys have been studying these problems and training and teaching this stuff for a long time. And there's a lot of really great wisdom to be found in the old works, and you can't just learn from books. It's also about learning from people, and specifically the right people. And you're really serendipity is a part of it. You'll never really know what's out there unless you put yourself out there and allow discovery to happen. And there's a lot of hidden gems. My opinion, Kung Fu San Soo is like one of the best martial arts ever invented, and but you never hear about it, except unless you're in certain limited circles. It's not in the mainstream. It's not on every street corner like a lot of other martial arts are. And I would say, like in martial arts in general, there's a lot of stuff like that. There's a lot of great stuff that just does not exist in traditional or commercialized martial arts and combat sports. If you really want to find the best martial arts, go to the schools that are just a single location. It's not a chain school. It's just, it's just a single location with somebody who's teaching something that you're not going to find just anywhere, and try different things, see what's out there to discover that you might not just come across on YouTube or anywhere in the mainstream culture. And then finally, keep studying, training, and learning as long as you live, because it's a lifestyle, it's a lifelong journey, and if it's something that you can continue to be rewarded by for as long as you live. So I really appreciate you being an inspiration for that, Rich, and taking these ancient teachings. It's always a process of, you never teach exactly what you learned. You take what you learned and you express it in your own way. You synthesize it into a new version, a new representation of the principles, and that's how these same principles keep getting passed down generation after generation. So I appreciate the way that you bring things together, and the really unique perspective that you have on these things, that has been a really big inspiration to me in everything that I've studied and taught since.
Well, thanks, Dan. Like I said, I always enjoyed teaching you. And it's also worth noting, I've not made up none of this is my insights. It's, as you said, everything I get's from the classics. I mean, I'm not that smart. Those guys were really intelligent. Very intelligent.
Yeah.
Very intelligent people. So, but yeah, well, thanks, Dane. It was great, and I'm glad you're doing well. Looks like you are. And Andrew, you're here in San Diego?
Yeah, I'm in San Diego.
Oh, God, I see the Tai Chi.
Yeah, that's we hosted World Tai Chi Day, and that was part of the banner.
Yeah. Okay. Neat. Now you do workshops or something through Meetup, I believe.
He's
Yes.
he's a co-organizer on the Tai Chi meetup.
Okay, that's where I've seen you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, are you still doing that?
Oh yeah. Now that I got my vaccines, people are coming out again, so I've hosted 2 classes at the park, public classes. So far,
Where do you
do it.
Where do you do it?
Yeah, if you go on Tai Chi on our meetup, you can find everything. But that's the best way to find it. Yeah.
I'll come visit you. I'll come see
thanks.
you.
Yeah, there's a Saturday class on the meetup. Had a really great turnout this past weekend. It's really the perfect time to do Tai Chi, and it's always a perfect time. But now more than ever, I mean, the world needed this stuff even before the pandemic. like everybody really needed this stuff just to de-stress and have some kind of personal daily mind-body energetic hygiene practice, exercise, breath work, meditation, and strengthening your immune system, for maintaining baseline physical, mental, emotional, spiritual wellness. And now people need it more than ever. The stuff that we've been teaching is more important than ever. So I think that people are becoming more conscious of the need for mind-body practices and are seeking these things out even more, starting to take it even more seriously.
Exactly.
All right.
So any final takeaways from either one of you guys?
I think we've covered it all.
Yeah. My favorite thing is soft beats hard. You know,
Yeah.
you shoot a bullet into water or sand, it stops.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Well, I will say then, to be continued, and I will look forward to seeing you around and staying in touch. Thanks again a whole bunch for coming on, Rich. It's been really a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great. Finally.
Pleasure.
Have a good night, everyone.
Care,
Thanks for watching.
All right. Have a good night, Rich. Have a good night.
Take care, Andrew.
Thanks,
I'll come see you one of these days.
Cool. Look forward to it.